Breaking. Armed men storm city. Captain Traoré under direct attack. Right now in Burkina Faso, chaos. Armed men have stormed the city, targeting none other than Captain Ibrahim Traoré himself. What just happened could change everything. Explosions, gunfire, and panic in the streets. But this isn't a movie. This is a real attack. And the target? Captain Traoré. You won't believe who might be behind a stunning escalation. Heavily armed men launched a sudden assault, closing in on Traoré's stronghold. Sources say it was a direct attempt to eliminate the African leader making waves across the globe. This isn't just an attack on one man. It's an attack on everything he stands for. Was this an inside job? A foreign plot? Or the beginning of a much bigger war? He warned us this would happen. Now it has. Traoré is under direct attack, and the world is watching. Here's what the media won't show you. Breaking news. Armed militants have stormed the city in a coordinated attack targeting Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the revolutionary leader of Burkina Faso. In a night of chaos, gunfire echoed through the streets as elite forces scrambled to secure the area. Traoré's leadership now faces one of its biggest threats yet. Was this an assassination attempt? Who's behind the attack? Is this a foreign-backed move to destabilize the region? This video brings you verified details, eyewitness footage, and an urgent analysis of how this shocking assault could impact West Africa's resistance against Western influence. What you'll learn in this video: what triggered the armed attack in Burkina Faso, how Traoré responded under pressure, possible foreign involvement or coordination, the state of Burkina Faso's security forces, what this means for Africa's anti-imperialist movement. 1. What triggered the armed attack in Burkina Faso? The armed attack referenced appears to align with the March 2025 massacre in the Bouclé du Mouhoun region, particularly around Solenzo, where over 130 ethnic Fulani civilians were killed by Burkina Faso's security forces and allied militias, specifically the Volunteers for the Defense of the Homeland (VDP), during Operation Green Whirlwind 2. This was followed by retaliatory attacks by the al-Qaeda-affiliated Jamaat Nusrat al-Islam wa al-Muslimin (JNIM), which killed at least 100 civilians in Suru province. The triggers for these events are complex, rooted in Burkina Faso's ongoing conflict with jihadist groups and internal ethnic tensions, jihadist insurgency, and territorial control. Since 2015, Burkina Faso has faced escalating violence from non-state armed groups, SAGs, like JNIM and the Islamic State in the Greater Sahara ISGS, which control approximately 40% of the country's territory, particularly in the north and east. These groups exploit weak governance, economic stagnation, and ethnic divisions to expand influence, often targeting civilians and infrastructure. The Solenzo massacre was part of a military operation aimed at reclaiming areas under JNIM control, which had dominated parts of western Burkina Faso for 7 years. Ethnic tensions and military strategy. The operation targeted Fulani communities, often accused by the government and VDPs of supporting jihadists, though community leaders deny these claims. The military's heavy-handed approach, including indiscriminate killings, was likely triggered by the need to assert control in contested areas and respond to jihadist blockades, such as the one in Djibo since February 2022. These blockades disrupt food and service access, escalating tensions and prompting aggressive military responses, political instability, and military rule. The 2022 coups, culminating in Captain Ibrahim Traoré's rise, were driven by public and military frustration over the government's failure to curb jihadist violence. This instability has fueled a cycle of violence, where military operations like Green Whirlwind 2 aim to demonstrate strength, but often exacerbate civilian suffering and provoke retaliatory attacks by groups like JNIM. The March 2025 attack reflects this broader pattern of escalating conflict between government forces, militias, and insurgents. The attack was not an isolated event, but part of a broader conflict dynamic involving jihadist expansion, ethnic profiling, and a military junta struggling to maintain legitimacy amid worsening security. 2. How Traoré responded under pressure. Captain Ibrahim Traoré, Burkina Faso's junta leader since the September 2022 coup, has faced immense pressure from ongoing jihadist attacks, coup attempts, and international criticism. His response to the March 2025 crisis and broader challenges reflects a mix of defiance, military escalation, and strategic alliances. Military escalation and rhetoric. Traoré has prioritized a total war approach against jihadist groups, rejecting dialogue or de-radicalization programs initiated by his predecessor. Following the Solenzo massacre, he did not publicly address the specific allegations of military-led atrocities, but his government announced an investigation by the Wahiguya High Court into the killings of 223 civilians in Nodin and Saro villages in February 2025, indicating some acknowledgement of public outcry. However, Traoré's broader strategy has been to double military spending, deploy drones and helicopters, and create rapid response forces to counterinsurgents, as seen in operations like Green Whirlwind 2, defiance against criticism. Facing accusations of human rights abuses by groups like Human Rights Watch, Traoré's regime has cracked down on dissent, suspending media outlets like BBC, Voice of America, and TV5 Monde for reporting on military atrocities. In June 2025, journalists and critics, including Otiana Serge Olan and others, were arrested and forcibly conscripted, signaling a repressive approach to manage narratives under pressure. This suggests Traoré prioritizes control over public perception to maintain support among his base, particularly the military and pro-junta civilians, response to coup attempts. In April 2025, Traoré's government foiled a coup plot allegedly orchestrated from Ivory Coast, involving former soldiers and jihadist leaders aiming to attack the presidential palace. Traoré responded by calling for mass demonstrations on April 30th to condemn Western interference, rallying public support and framing the coup as a foreign-backed attempt to destabilize his regime. This move strengthened his domestic legitimacy among Pan-Africanist supporters, despite ongoing security failures. International realignment. Under pressure, Traoré has deepened ties with Russia, hosting Russian instructors, and aligning with the Alliance of Sahel States, AS, with Mali and Niger. His visit to Moscow in May 2025, meeting Vladimir Putin, underscored this shift, with Russia providing military support to counter jihadists. This pivot away from Western partners like France and the US reflects Traoré's attempt to bolster his regime's security capabilities amid domestic instability. Traoré's response combines aggressive military tactics, suppression of dissent, and strategic alliances to consolidate power, though these measures have not significantly improved security and have drawn international condemnation. 3. Possible foreign involvement or coordination. The question of foreign involvement in Burkina Faso's conflicts, particularly the March 2025 attack and the April 2025 coup attempt, is contentious, with allegations from both Traoré's government and external observers. Evidence is often speculative, but several threads emerge. Allegations of Western involvement. Traoré and his supporters frequently claim Western powers, particularly France and the US, are fueling instability to maintain neo-colonial influence. Posts on X and government statements allege that the April 2025 coup plot, based in Ivory Coast, involved French-supplied weapons aimed at assassinating Traoré. These claims align with Traoré's narrative that Western criticism, such as U.S. General Michael Langley's accusations of gold reserve mismanagement, masks imperialist agendas. However, no concrete evidence from credible sources substantiates direct French or U.S. involvement in the coup or attacks. Ivory Coast's role. Burkina Faso's authorities claim the April 2025 coup plot was orchestrated from Ivory Coast, involving ex-soldiers like Captain René David Ouedraogo. The junta's accusations suggest Ivory Coast, a former French ally, may be hosting anti-Traoré factions, possibly with tacit Western support. Ivory Coast has not officially responded, and without verified evidence, these claims remain inconclusive but fuel regional tensions, Russian support and influence. Russia's growing presence, with 100 to 300 instructors deployed since January 2025, suggests active coordination with Traoré's regime. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has pledged weapons and training for the EAS's 5,000-troop anti-jihadist force, formed in April 2025. While this strengthens Traoré's military, it also raises questions about Russia's role in shaping Burkina Faso's counterinsurgency tactics, which have been criticized for civilian targeting. Russia's involvement appears more aligned with supporting Traoré than destabilizing him. Unlike Western allegations, jihadist coordination across borders, JNHM and ISGS operate transnationally, with bases in Mali and Niger, suggesting regional coordination in attacks like the March 2025 retaliatory strikes. These groups exploit porous borders and weak regional cooperation, particularly after Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger withdrew from ECOWAS in January 2025. There's no direct evidence of state-backed jihadist coordination, but their ability to sustain sieges and attacks indicates logistical support from cross-border networks. While Traoré's claims of Western-backed coups resonate with his base, they lack verifiable evidence. Russia's tangible military support contrasts with speculative Western interference, but jihadist groups' regional operations suggest a complex interplay of local and foreign actors. 4. The state of Burkina Faso's security forces. Burkina Faso's security forces, including the military and auxiliary VDPs, face significant challenges in combating jihadist insurgents while grappling with internal weaknesses and allegations of human rights abuses. Military reorganization and investment. Since taking power, Traoré has doubled military spending, acquired drones and helicopters, and recruited 10,000 new personnel for the Army and Navy. The creation of rapid support forces and military zones in 2025, where civilians are displaced to allow unhindered operations, reflects efforts to bolster capacity. However, over 60% of the country remains outside government control, indicating limited effectiveness. Volunteers for the Defense of the Homeland, VDPs, numbering over 50,000, are a cornerstone of Traoré's strategy, arming civilians to support counterinsurgency efforts. However, their lack of training and oversight has led to heavy casualties and widespread abuses, including the March 2025 Solenzo massacre targeting Fulani civilians. VDPs have been implicated in war crimes alongside regular forces, undermining social cohesion and fueling ethnic tensions, human rights violations. Security forces and VDPs have been accused of extrajudicial killings, torture, and massacres. Notably, the February 2025 killings of 223 civilians in Nodin and Soro, and the March 2025 Solenzo atrocities. These actions, often targeting suspected jihadist supporters, have drawn international condemnation and strained relations with Western partners who suspended aid post-2022 coups. The military's Justice Directorate remains underfunded, limiting accountability. Operational challenges. The security forces struggle with jihadist sieges, improvised explosive devices, and attacks on infrastructure, which restrict humanitarian access and civilian movement. The loss of Western support, including French intelligence and U.S. training, has left gaps that Russian instructors have only partially filled. The force's reliance on aggressive tactics and ethnic profiling has also alienated communities, complicating counterinsurgency efforts. Burkina Faso's security forces are stretched thin, undertrained, and prone to abuses, undermining their ability to restore territorial control or public trust, despite increased investment. 5. What this means for Africa's anti-imperialist movement. The events in Burkina Faso, particularly Traoré's leadership and the 2025 crises, have significant implications for Africa's anti-imperialist movement, which seeks to reduce Western influence and assert sovereignty. Symbol of resistance. Traoré's expulsion of French forces in 2023, rejection of the CFA franc, and pivot to Russia have made him a figurehead for anti-imperialist sentiment across Africa. Solidarity protests in Ghana and Liberia in April 2025, following the coup attempt, reflect his appeal as a symbol of African dignity against neocolonialism. His alignment with Mali and Niger in the AS, formed in 2023, strengthens this narrative, positioning the Sahel as a frontline against Western dominance. Challenges to legitimacy. The ongoing security crisis, including the March 2025 massacres and failure to reclaim territory, undermines Traoré's anti-imperialist credentials. Critics argue that his reliance on Russian support risks replacing one foreign influence with another, while human rights abuses alienate potential supporters. The extension of military rule to 2029 and media crackdowns further weaken claims of democratic sovereignty, potentially fracturing the movement's unity. Regional impact. The AES's withdrawal from ECOWAS in January 2025 signals a broader shift toward regional self-reliance, but it isolates Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger from West African cooperation. This fragmentation could hinder anti-imperialist goals by limiting economic and security collaboration, while jihadist violence continues to destabilize the region. The AES's 5,000-troop anti-jihadist force, backed by Russia, aims to counter this, but its effectiveness remains unproven. Inspiration versus instability. Traoré's policies, such as redirecting national wealth to education and healthcare, resonate with Pan-Africanists advocating grassroots development. However, the humanitarian crisis, 2.1 million displaced, 6.5 million needing aid, suggests that anti-imperialist rhetoric has not translated into stability. This tension risks disillusioning supporters if security and governance fail to improve. The anti-imperialist movement gains momentum from Traoré's defiance, but faces challenges from Burkina Faso's deteriorating security and governance, highlighting the difficulty of balancing sovereignty with effective statecraft. Conclusion. The March 2025 armed attack in Burkina Faso was triggered by a military operation against jihadist-controlled areas, exacerbated by ethnic tensions and a broader insurgency. Traoré's response under pressure has been to escalate military efforts, suppress dissent, and seek Russian support, though these measures have not curbed violence. Allegations of foreign involvement, particularly from the West, remain unproven, while Russia's role is more evident in bolstering the junta. Burkina Faso's security forces are under-resourced and implicated in abuses, undermining their effectiveness. For Africa's anti-imperialist movement, Traoré's leadership is a rallying point but risks being overshadowed by ongoing instability and repression. The situation underscores the complex interplay of local conflicts, foreign influence, and ideological aspirations in the Sahel.